Peace and love, great Nigerian youth, progressive Nigerian youth, and Nigerians all over the country. You are welcome to the A Better Country podcast. My name is OT, aka OT the Father. Yeah. I'm an artist, music producer, all-round creative. A lot has happened in the country over the past month and, protests from one thing to the other, killings, just general mayhem. It's been crazy. So after everything considered, the aim of this podcast is to educate Nigerians, especially Nigerian youth, about the government, our rights, the country, and everything we need to know to progress in this fight for a better country. Personally, I think education is key. Education is the key, changing our mentality towards how we approach Nigeria as a country is key. And I believe the more education we have as youth in this country, the more advantage we have over our oppressors and the problems that we have in this country. Like Lucky Dube used to sing, "They won't build no schools anymore. All they build will be prison. Yeah, they don't want you educated, the oppressors don't want you educated, they don't want you to know. You get me? So, by all means, educate yourself, and this is the main reason for this podcast. So on today's episode, the theme is Know Thy Right. So we're going to be talking about the constitutional fundamental human rights you have as a Nigerian in this country. In this episode, we're going to talk about 5 rights. 1. Right to life. 2. Right to dignity. 3. Right to liberty. 4. Rights to fair hearing. 5. Rights to privacy. So without wasting any more time, I am going to do a brief introduction before I read you your rights. So, what are fundamental human rights? Fundamental human rights are referred to as the basic rights and freedoms that belong to every person in the world from birth until death. These basic rights are based on shared values like dignity, fairness, equality, respect, and independence. These values are defined and protected by law. The United Nations has defined human rights as the rights inherent to all human beings regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. Human rights include the right to life and liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and many more. Everyone is entitled to these rights without discrimination. In the Democratic Republic of Nigeria, these rights are protected by the Constitution. Following the death of military dictator and de facto ruler of Nigeria, General Sani Abacha in 1998, his successor, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, initiated the transition which heralded Nigeria's return to democratic rule in 1999. The ban on political activities was lifted, and political prisoners were released from detention facilities. And on May 29, 1999, a new constitution was formed, inaugurating the Nigerian Fourth Republic. The 1999 constitution has been subjected to amendments more than once. In January 2011, 2 amendments were signed by President Olusegun Obasanjo, the first 2 modifications since the document came into use in 1999. In respect to the fundamental human rights, the rights are as follows. Number 1. Right to life. Life is defined as the existence of an individual human being or animal. So right to life is the right to exist for a citizen. No one can intentionally deprive an individual of this right, be it another individual or the government. A citizen's right to life can be revoked if said citizen commits a crime in respect to the laws of the land. An equivalent sentencing by the courts results in execution, death. Exceptions of the right to life. For the defense of any person from unlawful violence or for the defense of property. in order to effect a lawful arrest or to prevent the escape of persons lawfully detained, for the purpose of suppressing a riot, insurrection, or mutiny. Right number 2. Right to dignity. Dignity is defined as the state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect. So therefore, every individual is entitled to respect for the dignity of his or her person, and accordingly, no person shall be subject to torture or inhuman or degrading treatment. No person shall be held in slavery or servitude. And lastly, no person shall be required to perform forced or compulsory labor. Exceptions of this right: any labor required in consequence of the sentence or order of a court, any labor required of members of the armed forces of the Federation or the Nigeria Police in pursuance of their duties as such. In the case of persons who have conscientious objections to service in the armed forces of the Federation, any labor required which is reasonably necessary in the event of any emergency or calamity threatening the life or well-being of the community, or any labor or service that forms part of normal communal or other civic obligations of the well-being of the community. Such compulsory national service in the armed forces of the Federation, as may be prescribed by an act of the National Assembly, such compulsory national service which forms part of the education and training of the citizens of Nigeria, as may be prescribed by an act of the National Assembly. Right number 3. Right to liberty. Liberty is defined as the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, or political views. Every person shall be entitled to his personal liberty, and no person shall be deprived of such liberty. Exceptions of the right of liberty: 1. In execution of a sentence in order of a court in respect of a criminal offense of which he or she has been found guilty, for the purpose of bringing he or she before a court in execution of the order of a court, or upon a reasonable suspicion of he or she having committed a criminal offense, as well as to prevent he or she from committing a criminal offense. In the case of a person who has not attained the age of 18 years for the purpose of his education or welfare. In the case of a person suffering from infectious or contagious disease, persons of unsound mind, persons addicted to drugs or alcohol, or vagrants, for the purpose of their care and treatment or the protection of the community. Or lastly, immigration or border protection and lawful expulsion and extradition. Right to fair hearing. This right guarantees that a person who is charged with an offense and who has been detained in lawful custody awaiting trial shall not continue to be kept in such detention for a period longer than the maximum period of imprisonment prescribed for the offense. Any person who is arrested or detained shall have the right to remain silent or avoid answering any question until after consultation with a legal practitioner or any other person of his own choice. I'm going to read this again because I believe that this is very important, especially in the times that we're in with the law enforcement in Nigeria. So I'm going to read this again. It says, any person who is arrested or detained shall have the right to remain silent or avoid answering any question until after consultation with a legal practitioner or any other person of his choice. Any person who is arrested or detained shall be informed in writing within 24 hours and in a language that he understands of the facts and grounds for his arrest or detention. Any person who is arrested or detained in accordance with subsection 1c of this section shall be brought before a court of law within a reasonable time. Rights to call a witness of his or her own choosing. Access to the records of the trial proceeding. Rights to an interpreter if he or she cannot understand the language used during the trial. Any person who is unlawfully arrested or detained shall be entitled to compensation and public apology from the appropriate authority or person, and in this subsection, the appropriate authority or person in quotes means an authority or person specified by law. Rights to privacy. Privacy is defined as a state in which one is not observed or disturbed by other people. The privacy of citizens, their homes, correspondence, telephone conversations, and telegraphic communications is hereby guaranteed and protected. Elements of this right. 1. Individual privacy. This will protect an individual from unlawful invasive drug testing and blood testing. Number 2. Home privacy. This will protect individual from unlawful entry into his or her residence. Number 3. Conservation, communications, correspondence privacy. This will protect every form of an individual's communication. So that is it on today's episode of A Better Country podcast. Before I sign out, I just want to remind every Nigerian to stay strong. We can bring about the change that we want to see. All hands on deck. We have work to do. We can't afford to give up on our future. This country is our home. We cannot afford to give up on our future. So stay strong. Once again, my name is OT, aka OT the Father, aka like no other. And I'm signing out. Peace and love, fam.